system. So regardless of whether it's Windows, Linux, Mac, there's always client software called FTP. So if you type FTP on any system, you'll get this shell. Now I'm gonna make it a bit larger. So typing FTP on any system will give you this shell where you can type commands. If I type help, you'll see all the commands for the FTP protocol. And there's really a lot of stuff in here. In order to connect to a computer, you'd press O and press enter. Then it tells you to. So this is where you would type the computer address, the IP address, which you can see again using the command header show grep enet, and then you'll see your IP address. In this case it's this address, so that's what we'll type. And it asks the username and the password, and you'll see now we are connected. So for example, we can list the files in the current directory. If we press ls, and it's a bit large font here, so maybe if I maximize it and type ls, you'll see all the directories in the current directory. The current directory we see using pwd. So the main basic Linux commands work. You'll see we're in /home/ubuntu on this computer. So if I open the file explorer, you can see that those are the same directories as these ones. So now we can upload and download files from our computer. So let's create some file. Open Notepad and call it write whatever you want. Gonna save it as hello.txt, and now I can upload it using the put command. So by typing put with the file name, in this case hello.txt, it will upload the file to the Ubuntu computer on the right, to the server. So you'll see in this case we have our permission denied. So what we need to do is to enable write mode. We can type quit to exit this connection, and we'll open the config file of vsftpd on this computer. So we open a terminal and we'll open a file called ftpd.conf, which is in the etc directory. So we type sudo and then any editor you want, for example gedit etc vsftpd.conf. So that's this file, etc vsftpd.conf. And this is the actual configuration file of your server. So for example, you can allow, or you can set all kind of configuration options using this configuration file. And they have when they have this symbol in front, that means it's ignored. So any line that doesn't have that symbol in front is not ignored. And you'll see all kind of options. For example, you can allow or disallow anonymous login, so without username, password. You can allow write enable, so that is why we couldn't write before, permission denied, because write enable was not set to yes. So in order to enable it, we just remove this character here, and once you remove the character, the line is no longer ignored. You'll see uncomment, so that means remove that symbol, and now you would be able to write. So save it, you can press save here. You'll see there are some other options here as well. So if you want to, you can configure the whole thing to your liking. Next we need to restart the server software with our new config. So we type sudo service vsftpd restart. So this command will reload your configuration file, the one in etc vsftpd.conf. You see now it is loaded, and on our client we can now connect again to our IP address. So use your username and password. Now if I close the terminal and take a look in the home directory, you'll see just as it was before. But now let's try to upload something. So put command with, for example, hello.txt. And you'll see we now uploaded a file, hello.txt. We can double click it and you'll see the contents that I wrote on the other computer. So the put command will upload a file. To download a file, you can use the get command. So let's create a new file on this computer. So I'll name it download.txt. You see, created that file, and we can download it using the get command. So if I type get download.txt, it downloads the file to this computer, to the client. So if I open the folder here, you'll see now we have downloads.txt. You'll see it was created on the server. So PD allows you to do basic file transfer. If you type the help command, you'll see there's more things you can do. Make directory. You can also remove directories or remove files. You can upload multiple using input. So if we delete these two and we say input star.txt, so that means any file ending in txt, you'll see input will press yes, upload all the .txt files. Now there's also mget that will download all the txt files. And you'll see there's all kind of other commands for the FTP protocol, but the basic idea of this protocol is transfer files, to download and upload files to and from your server. So the server on the right here is running the server, and on the left we have the hacker's computer, a Kali Linux, so Kali version here. We're going to open a terminal, and what we'll do is to find out more about this computer. So we just know the IP address, or the hacker just knows the IP address, which you can get using the command ip-addr-show. So if I quit this and I type the command ip-addr-show, you'll see it tells you the IP address. So the command is ip-addr-show. It tells you the internet address or the network address of the computer. Now don't copy the /24 stuff there, or the / whatever you have. Just the 4 digits is your address. So that is the address, and we'll use a tool called nmap to find out more information about this server. So we type nmap space with the IP address, press enter, and you'll see, I'll make it full screen. So nmap space with the server address, and you'll see all of the applications that are running, all of the services, and you'll see it's running one service, an FTP service, and it's using the communication line 21 here, so port 21. But it doesn't give us all of the information, so we might do a more aggressive scan. So -A, that it scans for is also the software version and the version number, and tries to find out more information. So -A will do a more aggressive scan. So if we run that, you'll see it takes a bit longer, because what it will do is to detect, for example, version number of the system. So here it says software being used for server is vsftpd, and then also the version number. It might also detect the operating system. So in this case, it told us that it's a Ubuntu system. Now that we have that basic information, we see that it's running on the default port 21. Doesn't really matter much, but using nmap we know that the server now is running which services it's running, in this case FTP. And what we might do next is use a tool called Hydra to do a password attack. Of course we can just do connect to it, so we can say FTP open connect to the IP address, and then guess the username and password. So it's a Ubuntu computer, so maybe it's Ubuntu username, and then you could try to guess the password. You'll see typed a password, and it was not the correct one. Of course you could just keep repeating this with hundreds of thousands of passwords, right? But it would take ages doing that manually. So what you can do instead is use a tool called Hydra to do that automatically. So we type Hydra -L with the username. Now we can guess that it's Ubuntu. If you don't know the username, you can also create a list of usernames. I'll show you that in a moment. Now we're gonna try hundreds of thousands of passwords or even millions of passwords. So we do -P with our password list. Now in order to do that, we need to have an actual password list. One of that list is included in Kali by default, so that is in user share word lists. There's a password list called rockutxt, and you'll see it has .gz on the end. That means it's like zip file, so it's a compressed file. We need to extract it. So we're gonna copy it to the Kali directory, paste, and now I right click, extract here. You see it's extracting the zip file. .gz is a zip file. Refresh it, and you'll see we have a password list, rockutxt, and that list contains 14 million passwords, commonly used passwords. So we go back to our terminal, and we'll use that password list, rockutxt, and then we'll type FTP : // so the FTP protocol and our target server. And what this will do is it will try login with username Ubuntu with any of the passwords in that password list. So if I open a new tab here and show you the contents, the file contents of the password list, you'll see it has millions of commonly used words. And it will try every password one by one, very rapidly, until it finds the correct password. So with this command we can do a brute force attack. It will try every password in that list, rockutxt list, for the user Ubuntu on that target IP address. So if I press enter, you see it will try that. And depending on how hard is the password, basically where it is in the list, or if it is in the list at all, it can find the password. So in this case, it found the username and password. And now we would be able to log in using FTP, because we know the username password. You can type our IP address, the username, and the password, and now we're inside the FTP server, even though we didn't know the passwords. So we used the Hydra tool to crack the passwords of the FTP server. So it returns in this case the password. Now it might be that the password is not in the file, in the rockutxt. It has 14 million passwords, but it might be that it's not in there. In that case, you can download other password lists from the internet that are even larger than 14 million commonly used passwords. And that way, it should be in there at some point if you have a billion password list. But 14 million passwords is already a good start that you might gain access to the actual computer. Many system administrators install a protocol called SSH. Secure shell. What it allows you to do is to remotely log into a computer and control it, similar to a remote desktop, but then it's console or terminal based. So what you can do is log in remotely with the terminal and then all kind of terminal commands. So it's a client server protocol as well. So on the Ubuntu system we'll install a program called OpenSSH server. So we type sudo apt install OpenSSH-server. That will install the SSH server. So that is sudo apt install OpenSSH server. I'm gonna press yes, and that will install the server software. After installing, you can then remotely connect to this computer with any computer. So it can be a Windows computer, it can be a Linux computer, it can be a Mac computer, or whatever client. We can connect to the server and then remotely control it with terminal commands. So we of course need to set our passwords. So if you didn't do that, set the password of your default user. In my case, it's Ubuntu. So sudo password will change your password for whatever username you type. Then what you need to do is to find out its IP address, so its network address. You can do that with the command ip-address show. And we can type get enet after that. So that will tell you the address of your network device. In this case, you'll see the IP address here, so 192.168 and so on. The slash is not included, so that is the network address. Now we can remotely connect to this computer. So we can start a terminal on whatever system you're using and type SSH, your username, add the server IP address, and press enter. Then you'll see this message and just type yes. And now it wants us to type the password. And once you type the password, you'll have an actual shell inside the server. So you'll see if I type who am I, it tells us we are inside the Ubuntu computer. Now to make that more clear, for example, I open the files here. You'll see I have two text files. So if I list the files in the directories using the ls command, you'll see those two files. So we are now remotely controlling this computer using the terminal. So you can use all the Linux commands. That is what the SSH protocol does. It allows you remote control of a computer using the terminal, using the command line. So we can now type any command we want or do anything on the system. For example, we might remove a file with the rm command, rm-rf, and we'll remove download.txt and look on this server computer what happens. So I press enter and you'll see that file is deleted. So we are remotely controlling the Ubuntu server using the SSH protocol. To exit or to stop the connection, just type exit and you'll see connection closed. So we are no longer connected to the server. So that is the SSH call. SSH allows you to remotely control a computer. And system administrators will often do that because they don't have to physically go to the computer. They can just log in using the SSH command and control the computer remotely, even if they're from home and they can connect to the office or maybe in another location, so they don't have to travel to the location. They just log in using the command line, control the computer, configure it, and it saves them a lot of travel time. So that is the SSH. Let's exploit the SSH server. So on the left we have the hacker's computer and on the right we have the Ubuntu server. The hacker of course doesn't know any information beforehand, so it will scan the target computer with a tool called nmap, and it might add the -a flag for aggressive scanning that tells us also like version numbers and which system is being used. So using the server's IP address, we can do a scan with the program nmap, and that might tell us, or that will tell us, which services or which apps are running. So you'll see the server is running two apps. It's running an FTP server and an SSH server. And it also tells us it's using Ubuntu. So a Ubuntu server in this case, running OpenSSH 8.9. And so what I might try to do next is to try to log in over SSH. For example, type SSH Ubuntu at the server. And then it asks the password. So it might try some random passwords. And keep trying that, right? So we can try something else. And of course we can do this all day until maybe we find the password. Now that would be a very inconvenient way to do it. So instead what a hacker will try to do is do a brute force attack. So using a password list. You can find a password list in the file like rock.txt is a password list, which you can find in the directory user share word lists. So copy that file. So right click copy and paste it in your home directory. You see I already did that, and it's a zip file, so right click extract here. So that's a list of passwords you will need for the actual attack. Commonly used passwords, it contains 14 million passwords in this file. Next, you can use a tool for doing the attack, so we can type hydra -l for the username. Now with nmap we saw that it was a Ubuntu system, so maybe the username is Ubuntu. Then type -p rock.txt // with the IP address. And that will try every password in that list for the user Ubuntu. So if I press enter, you'll see it is now trying every password in that list, and we immediately found the password of the SSH. So now you are able to SSH into the server, SSH with the server, and we can type the password. Now we are logged in, right? So we just had to type the hydra command with the password list to hack into the SSH protocol. Now it might be that you don't know the username. So in this case we knew the username. We type -L with the username. If you don't know the username, you can make a password list. For example, or you can download them as well. So we can say commonly used words or commonly used usernames, whichever. Create a very long list of usernames and then save it as users.txt. You can also find this kind of list online of common usernames. And then instead of -L ubuntu, we do capital L. So lowercase l is the specific username, capital L, you can specify a file name. So users.txt. And now it will try all of the passwords for all of the users in that list. And you'll see it also finds the password. So you can also do an attack if you don't know the specific username. So using a username list and password list, you can then carry out an SSH attack, a brute force attack with the program. Many systems let you share files over the network, so typically on Windows computers but on Linux as well, using their SMB server message block protocol. It's a client server protocol and it lets you share files on the network. So typically what you have is from your file explorer. So this works from Windows 95 and up. You can go to your computer, to your directory you're in, and you can then share any of those folders on your network or any folder on your computer by doing right click and then click sharing and security. So it might be a different button on your version of Windows or Linux, but you can share folders over the network. So we can say share this folder on the network, for example pictures, allow network users to change my files. You can also click on sharing and security. Make sure your firewall allows the sharing. We can click apply and OK. And now this drive is shared on the network and we should be able to access it from other computers. So in order to connect to this pictures folder here, to the shared drive, we need to know this computer's IP address. So we can open a command prompt and type the command ipconfig on Windows. That tells us the IP address of that Windows computer. You'll see IP address, so the network address and the 4 digits number. And now we can go to on Kali Linux or on any Linux system. We can go to the address using our file explorer. So we can say SMB, that is the protocol Windows uses, / with the IP address of the server. So that's this IP address. Remember, SMB is a client server protocol. And so we use that IP address. Then it will ask you your username, passwords, and you can browse the system then, for example, the pictures folder. And here are the same pictures that are in here. So you'll see I don't have any preview, but I might copy them to my computer. So I'm going to create some folder, pictures on my desktop. And you'll see I can paste them in there. And now I have those same pictures that were on the Windows computer. So we can access the shared Windows folder using the SMB protocol, SMB : / with the IP address. It will ask the username, password, if those are set, and then you can access all of those folders that are shared on the Windows computer. If there is a shared folder on your Windows target computer, so with nmap you can do a scan. What services is it running? You might discover it's running the SMB protocol, so sharing files or folders. You see all this Windows stuff open. So you can then try a null session attack. A null session attack is a type of attack where you try to authenticate to using an empty username and password. This allows you to access the directories and see the directories of that computer. So in order to do that attack, you type SMB client -n -l 4/, and then the IP address of your target. So in this case, this is the target IP address. And this will try to authenticate using empty username password. And let's see what it does. So you'll see it immediately dumps the shared drives. If that is the case, then you can also connect to it, access the files and folders. So we can say SMB client / 192.168 the IP address, and maybe we want to access the pictures folder. So with the SMB client -n-l / is the IP address, it does the null session attack. So it checks if you can connect with username password and then dumps all of the shared folders. Then you can type SMB client with the slashes the other way around. So notice that there are 4 backslashes, and here there's 2 4/, the IP address and then any of those shared directories. Now it will ask a password, but we know that the null attack worked, so we can just press enter. Now we can list the files in folders, for example. We can get a file or download files. Maybe we download all of them, so get asterisk dot, in this case you'll see there's JPEG files here. Or maybe a specific one like winter JPEG. And that downloads the file to your computer when you type the get command. So if I go to the home directory, you'll see now I have winter JPEG on the computer. Now you can also upload files. For example, we can say put and then any file on our computer. Uploads files to this Windows computer, to this shared directory. You'll see hello.txt just appeared here. So that is a null session attack. It allows you to log in without username password, and it's just a one-line command, right? So it's SMB client space -n-l 4 backslashes and the IP address. So it's a very simple attack, but modern versions of Windows, they don't do this anymore. So it's enabled by default in Windows 2000, Windows XP and older versions, but newer versions of Windows, they generally don't allow a null session attack. Okay, so let's hack the Windows computer once again. So the attacker, the hacker on the left, will scan the targets by its IP address. So in this case, ipconfig on Windows shows the IP address, the network address. The attacker might find it using ARP scan, or might have access to the router, or might just scan randomly all the IP addresses on the network. So with nmap we scan for open services, and this tells us just basic information like it's running some Windows stuff here. So we want to do an aggressive scan as a hacker. We do -a with the flag because we want to know versions of the software. If it's running old versions of software, like in this case it's running Windows XP, it's vulnerable to attacks. So this can take a moment. The -a scan, it will detect all the version numbers. So we find out the target is running Windows XP, right? Because map space IP address -a does an aggressive scan and tells you the version numbers. So in this case, Windows XP, and you'll also see some Windows XP stuff here. It's running Samba. You also see here SMB, SMB time, SMB. So it's running Samba protocol. So we can use a tool called Metasploit. Metasploit is a tool that many hackers use for hacking. So inside Kali Linux, we type msf console, and we know it's running Windows XP, which is an old version of the Windows system, obviously. And now we can search for exploits for Windows. For example, we can say search SMB. Note we typed msf console before, and we see this banner here, Metasploit, which contains all kind of malicious programs that we can use to take over computers. So we type search SMB, and you'll see all kind of exploit code for SMB. So the one we'll use is called use. So use will use it. The command will use Windows because that's our target. SMB MS08067 net API. So we'll use that exploit. That exploit will allow us to remotely control this Windows XP computer. So this exploit only works for XP. It's because it exploits a vulnerability in the Windows XP protocol. So if your target is an older version of Windows, a newer version, it won't work. It should be XP for this particular exploit to work. Now note when you type search SMB, you'll get all kind of exploits here for different systems, right? But in this case, our target is an XP system, and that's why we type use with this exploit name. Then we can type show options to see what we need to configure. I type show options. And if you scroll up, you'll see that we need to set the rhost, which is the target computer. And you see it has some default ports. We don't really care about that. We can type set rhost with the target IP address. You see that sets the rhost variable. So set space rhost space your IP address. And then we type run to run the exploit. You'll see now it's doing some stuff, and now it says meterpreter. So we have terminal access or console access into the computer. We have the meterpreter shell. If I type help, you'll see all the commands I can do. And you'll see I can, for example, play sounds. We can do some things with the webcam. We might take a screenshot. For example, we can type here the command get screenshot. It grabs screenshots of the desktop. So let's do that. Screenshot. And you'll see it saved a screenshot of this computer. If I go to open folder, you'll see we have a screenshot now of the target computer. And we can control this computer remotely now. So we might do something with the mouse or other things. We might restart the system or shut it down, or we might browse around in the system. We can do some things with the network. You see there's file system commands as well, so all of the default file system commands. For example, we can list files in the directory. You'll see what directory we are in. We're inside the Windows system directory. So maybe we want to go up, list the directories, and probably you would be interested in the users file, so documents and settings. So cd document settings, list the files. Okay, maybe inside the Frank user list. And so you can browse around the file system and download, upload files. So if you scroll up here to file system, you'll see we can, for example, upload files with the upload commands, and we can download files with the download commands. We have hacked the computer basically, so we can do anything with the system. Might do all kind of things now, depending on what you're interested in. For example, maybe we're interested in some files this user had, like what is this funny2.exe. So get, I think it's downloads funny2.exe. And now we downloaded that file from the Windows computer. You'll see it here. We might upload our own files, for example, winter JPEG. We can upload it. And you'll see now that file has been uploaded into the Windows XP computer, which is in the default directory. So we can, if we open that, we can go to the document settings directory. I think it's not this directory, but see document settings Frank, and you'll see it's uploaded this file. Now, of course, we can add any file. For example, maybe we have some file called hacked.txt, which we can then upload into the Windows XP computer. You see now it uploaded that file. So we can remotely control this computer. We can also do a hash dump that will dump all of the passwords of the computer in hash format. So I have a course on hashing if you want to learn how to crack those hashes, how to crack those passwords of Windows. So password or hash cracking, I have a course on that. We can do all kind of other things here with webcam or with the system itself. Like we can even remotely shut down the computer. So we could do that. And then there's some other stuff here. Let's just shut down the computer. So we hacked the computer and now we can remotely shut it down. You'll see now it's shutting down. So all this is possible because the victim was running Windows XP, which we could exploit before. So we could type before, if we exit the meterpreter shell, you'll see we use this exploit that works for Windows XP. So you can type msf console, starts the Metasploit console. Let me make this full screen. So it takes a moment to start the Metasploit console. Then you would type use with this version. So this exploit, because that's an exploit that works for Windows XP. Then we could set the target host with set rhost and the IP address. Then you would type run, and once you press run and enter, you would have hacked the Windows XP system. So it's pretty basic to hack a Windows XP system if it's running the SMB file sharing or folder sharing. If it's sharing folders on a network, you can remotely take over the Windows XP computer using this technique. Now obviously with a newer version of Windows, Microsoft probably fixed this vulnerability. But there are many vulnerabilities with Metasploit. It's an exploitation framework. So if I start it, and you can search inside Metasploit itself for exploits. So for example search, and maybe we search for and you'll see there's all kind of others as well. So depending on the system, and it's not just Samba, you might just search for Windows, for example, and all kind of things that target the Windows software or software running on Windows. For example, there's active PDF, web grabber, or some kind of software, Yahoo Messenger. You scroll up, all kind of Windows software that can be exploited. And so that's what the Metasploit console is for, and why hackers use it is because they can use this to remotely control computers using one of these exploits depending on the target system. So in this video we just did the Windows XP file sharing exploitation. So with other versions of Windows that might not work because the exploit code is not made for that system. But this is the general idea of exploitation.